This is the craziest time the crypto market's ever seen. This is the time where all the coins go to zero. This is the time where the riches are made, so you gotta act now. Well, I personally think that right now we are on the edge of the craziest altcoin season that basically anybody has ever seen. And I, however, think that most people do not properly know how to take advantage of the situation. They have no idea how to trade it. They have no idea how to benefit from these cycles to the maximum of their abilities. All they know is to buy and hopefully sell for more. But which coins do you buy when? How much gains is normal? How many gains? How many coins should you be trading? Let me today give you guys a little rundown of my crypto bull run strategy, which coins I'm watching, when that shifts, and why. Now, first of all, let me tell you, I buy a lot of different crypto coins for various reasons. Here, take a look at our perfect Dogecoin entry. Kind of funny. But as y'all might know, I always at any given moment have at least, I'm going to say $5 million worth of different crypto positions open. I've just got them running. Why? Because I'm a permanent bull. And what that basically means is I always have a bias for the crypto market to go up. But theoretically speaking, right now is one of the more uncertain periods because we've got the FOMC coming up. Then again, in the overarching market, there's still one strategy that really is the one I follow. So next couple of weeks, next couple of months, I'm still mostly rooting for top coins. A few days ago, I basically said, hey, it would make sense if Bitcoin actually tops out here. It's actually made itself the first higher high. We're happy to see it. But it would make sense for the market to have a little bit of a correction into the FOMC before continuing on. With the grander idea being that even though we're primarily going sideways here in this part of the market, we've not seen any massive pump for a little bit, we still would like to focus on mostly top tier coins, which is basically your Bitcoin, your ETH, your XRP, your SOL, coins at the top of the list, because the thesis is generally speaking as follows. I'm not sure if y'all can see it perfectly right here, but I think it still makes enough sense. Bitcoin first, which we've already seen, as Bitcoin was about $70,000 the previous cycle, right now 120. I still think Bitcoin can end up at 180, maybe even 240, 250, something along those lines, but relatively. Let's say in one of the most best scenarios, that's a 2x. All we can hope to do is somewhere along that curve on that uptick, switch it over into a new coin, because doubling our money in a season, if we're using lower leverages or we're using some of my, for example, Payonix bot strategies, it can be okay. But for most people, that's not what they're here in the crypto space for. It's way too little. With Ethereum, I've often described that's usually the second phase. Basically, what we saw a few weeks ago, that Ethereum surge going from basically 1,500 to 4,900, that was the phase of Ethereum. Well, I don't think that phase is over, but I kind of think that that was the Ethereum phase. Right now, we're transitioning from Ethereum to large caps, but there's one thing that would invalidate it. There's a very good chance that just after FOMC, one of these weeks, we are going to see a plus 10,000, plus 20 or $25,000 candle in a week for Bitcoin. It could happen in a day. I mean, if you start thinking about it, a 15% move for Bitcoin in one day is very much possible. And right now we're inching closer towards the 130,000. At some point, a 15% move is going to be a $20,000 daily candle for Bitcoin. It can happen to both the upside and the downside without it being that weird. I mean, recently we celebrated our first $10,000 Bitcoin move. Eventually that will be a 20,000, and eventually that will be even higher numbers. There's a chance though that Bitcoin overtakes again by getting such a massive gain in a day. Percentage-wise, it doesn't have to be that crazy, but perhaps if Ethereum starts gaining, goes above 5,000, but it doesn't stay as the top gainer, at some point Bitcoin takes over. It prolongs the run by a bit, as right now most signs have showcased that this Bitcoin phase is over and Ethereum has already come. It could be that we kind of erase it, flip a little bit back, Bitcoin gains for a little bit, being the best from a risk-reward perspective, but let me break it down again. This just means that what is the highest likelihood of succeeding with still pretty good gains. That's the only thing we're saying right here. Would I still go back to Bitcoin and buying it? No. Why? I personally think the majority of the gains of the season for Bitcoin have already come. We are 2/3 of the way there, let's call it. Sure, there's still some gain potential, but I don't think it's going to more than double from here. It's already done the doubling this cycle. Ethereum is still, let's call it 10% below its all-time high, right? 5-7% below its all-time high. I still think Ethereum can perhaps even triple from these levels if we always call it a tripling. Since Ethereum still is a percentage down from it, we can better go with the next ship. Has it got the same probability of succeeding? No. Bitcoin, of course, is still more secure, but Ethereum's got more gains, and so it's a little, ratio calculation. I think Ethereum is in a pretty solid spot. But we've got outliers, and what about the large caps? Well, as at this point, we are, in my opinion, in this phase overlap. And even though Ethereum can still do a 3x, this season seems to be a bit different because of these digital asset treasury companies, these DATs. What's basically been happening is we've all of a sudden seen a massive new institutional interest in altcoins that we really didn't see these previous runs. Previously, it was more based on hype. Right now, it seems to be, hey, which company can just get the most money raised? That one is most likely going to be the, best succeeding coin out there. At least thus far, it seemed to be a big part of what the cycle is doing. If we, for example, consider Solana, the amount of money flowing into the Solana ecosystem, partially based on just these announcements and the massive raises, in my opinion, is pretty freaking crazy. Long story short, for the reason that I think institutions are playing an increasingly bigger role, I've basically switched where I'd normally be in an Ethereum phase to actually more of a hybrid, where I think we're in this phase overlap where Ethereum, from almost any risk-reward ratio, still is in the best position, not being at an all-time high, but still one of the highest percentage chances, with also the meme coin season and a lot of new onboarded users being mostly fans of Solana, and then these DATs, digital asset treasury companies, having massive amounts of popularity. I kind of feel as if Ethereum and large caps are in the similar boat, and with Ethereum this run being quite underwhelming, it's really hard to pick between these two, which is why I've stepped away from mostly being an Ethereum maxi here. That was a few weeks ago during its, I almost dropped something, crazy rally to 4,900. Right now, mostly big alts. Which are those? Well, primarily Solana, due to the massive treasury companies behind it right now. BNB, not because of any massive announcement. I mean, CZ, the co-founder of Binance, is getting some massive plans going, wants more partnerships, wants more integrations, but I don't think BNB is one that's going to gain very hard at any point. I think it's a consistent and slow gainer. However, that's the thing. As Binance increases, which it always does in these good markets, BNB slowly but surely increases as well. It just is not that volatile. And for my bot strategies, and by the way, these are the results of some of the bots I've been running. If you also want to get in on them or you're interested, the link is always down below. It's basically all automated, very simple strategies I cover every single day. I've got a couple $100,000 in these bots running right now. You can see the profit, right? 120K, we are up 60,000. $300,000 almost. We're only up 26,000, but this number is going to be very interesting. Another here, 160,000. We are up $140,000. We've been doing some pretty crazy numbers on these, but just keep watching back every single day as every single one of these things is tracked fully in one of my spreadsheets right here. And well, let me just tell you this. I think it's going to be one of the craziest crypto strategies, trading strategies you ever find because of how simple it is. But anyway, regardless, I'm focusing mostly on, like I was saying, Ethereum, but that was logical. XRP, primarily because it's the most hyped up coin and is the third in line. So it just makes sense to basically have a slightly better ratio than ETH. Thing is, XRP historically has underperformed. And that's because of the lawsuit, which is now over. But ETH, at the same time, XRP was trading at $3.50, was actually trading at like 12 or 1400. So the fact that ETH has tripled since then and XRP has stayed behind is kind of interesting. It might mean that it's still also quite undervalued. Anyway, Solana as well for the digital asset treasury companies. BNB makes sense. Dogecoin because of the ETF news and because it's basically the biggest meme out there. And then a couple of these coins have their own thesis, but let's just say I'm focusing on anything in this top of the top segment. There's a few other coins in here that make some sort of sense, but I'm focusing mostly on those. Chainlink also has some nice treasury announcements and, well, you get it. The reason I'm not really too much a fan of everything that's kind of below the belt right here, it's not because they can't do well. It's just because there's a bit of a pick and choose factor where, well, a 𝗓𝗂, an ICP, a Cosmos, sure, they could do well, but what exactly for? If you have a very specific thesis, one might be better than the other, but there's also a pretty good chance they're just slowly going to go into obscurity, never to recover. I mean, for example, Render. It makes a lot of sense to go for it. One of the biggest AI and, I guess, gaming coins out there. But now that the market wasn't really hot, you can see how many steps it's fallen down, right, over time. There's a lot of coins that are in a similar position, where if you just pick and choose, sure, you might win, but there's a very good chance that a few months later, they've actually dropped from, for example, here 64 to 104. Now, which ones will drop and which ones won't, that is quite difficult when it comes to this sector, as they all have their own reason for gaining, they all have their own reason for losing, but it's very much going to be either based on announcements or hype, and you can't really predict them too well. So when do they become better? Well, primarily when the top coins have gained so much that you're starting to see when you look around, hey, for example, you see this one makes more sense because specific announcements. I've been talking about Pump Fund. I've been talking about a few coins and why they make a lot of sense to purchase in this time. Not financial advice, by the way. But when all of a sudden you start to see a lot of coins are up 40% throughout the day, consistently multiple days in a row. From that angle is when I start transferring my top coins to basically smaller and smaller coins. Every cycle is different. Every cycle, whatever works best changes. But previous time, this October to January of 2024, 2025, it was mostly like these ISO type of coins, these utility type of coins that did really, really well. Like almost a year before that, there were all these VC type of coins and AI coins that did really, really well. Every single cycle is different. Before we had a DeFi season, a specific meme coin season, also back in like the November period. What the next big thing is going to be. Yesterday I said, hey, it might be robotics, maybe look into those coins as well. It might be AI or RWA again, which both had a really interesting period a while back, but you can't really know that up front. So that is after you see the top coins gain, you'll start to see more and more of a narrative being picked. And there's a lot of YouTubers right now who are giving their tier lists or are saying, oh, these coins to watch for the next run. Many of these people are biased. Many of them either have deals with those coins. They might get partnerships with them. They might have bought a ton of coins at a discount, just like some of these digital asset treasury companies are doing right now. They might know the team. They might get advisory tokens. There's a ton of different options. I wouldn't trust too many of them. If they're talking about smaller and smaller coins and the story doesn't make a lot of sense, there's very often some sort of shenanigans or bias going on. Unless the market's calling for it. Me, for example, talking about robotics, the reason I didn't want to name coins is because if I really start thinking about it, I'm like, well, damn. None of these are hyped up. It's just a gut feeling that the whole sector in stocks is doing well, might transfer over to crypto. The reason I don't mention specific crypto is because in reality, we don't really know if this whole sector is going to hop on anyway. So all I could do is maybe pick the biggest ones or the ones I've heard most about. But in reality, I don't really hear none about it. I'm just thinking logically, okay, chips, stocks, chip makers, chips, I was going to say, let's say, I guess, cloud things, but let's say chip makers, cloud things have all been so popular in stocks, there's a very good chance it's going to transfer over into crypto. And I think that makes sense. So those, if you're seeing a video of people saying that, I think it's also fair. But if you're seeing the most random ass coins, I always consider there might be some sort of bias going on there. Regardless, in a few weeks though, perhaps, or when the market's really, really hot, it does make sense again. Why? Well, because the moment you start to see hype, the moment you start to see speculatory waves, there's a lot more social media presence. You'll see all the videos do a lot better, and you see people looking for the next big thing, the next big opportunity. Right now, if I look around, ain't nobody looking for the next big coin. Everybody's talking about their current bags. They're not trying to sell everything they've got to go all in on that next big thing. Maybe in the meme coin world, sure, but in the general crypto space here, no. The hype is not at that point. It will come, though. And that will most likely come after a lot of these coins. Maybe an XRP, for example, flips a $7.50 all of a sudden. Or Ethereum goes to $6,900. All of a sudden, people made such good money, they want to put it into something new, something fresh, something hyped up. And that's when you see entire sectors getting hyped up, and that's when you can start pivoting again. So when do you sell those? And when do you go for the smaller coins? That's where the difficulty lies. Nobody knows exactly when to sell, but I'd say if you want like a timeline, we've stated this 1,000 times, but I'll say it right now. I personally think that most likely this whole run is not going to end after January. So I still think that the end was going to be somewhere between, well, already right now, basically August of this year and January of next year. I still stand by the fact that I still think if Bitcoin is going to go for some crazy gains, which I still think they will, it's probably going to not be over, it's probably going to be over within like 3-4 months. And if you're just accumulating, you got to make sure to understand that at some point, you are going to be buying that top. These periods right now, even though we're not in the most hyped up spots, but these are basically this point where you start to accumulate significant amounts because the alt season kind of seems quite certain around these levels. Not financial advice, but this is my opinion. So we accumulate proper. Just start that rotation circle like I just said earlier in the video. And sure, you could theoretically speaking just wait it out and wait for whatever's hyped up and then start entering. But you understand that this whole small coin hype up period, the reason that this is the end of this cycle, the reason that that's where people make most of their money is because that's delusion. That's where people go crazy. And that's also where you got to act really fast. You make a lot of money in a very short amount of time. And if you're not pivoting, if you're not hopping on fast, that's where most people lose their money. And that's why they start hating crypto. They think it's all a scam because they enter like at the last possible moment when everything's already doing really, really well. when you should have entered a lot before that. You make your gains on one sector, then it switches over into more and more degeneracy. Because when you really start breaking it down, the crypto market's been in an uptrend for many, many years in a row. Anybody that's not made a crazy sum of money over the last couple of months, well, they've been really bad at investing in this crypto market. That's the only truth behind it. If you've not been doing good the past couple of months, you're not good at what you do. And it's easy. I mean, you can call me rude for saying that, but it's something you have to accept. You've not played the game well. And it's maybe because you're concentrating on a certain thing. Hey, maybe you're actually above my freaking pay grade here. Maybe you have a strategy that I even can't comprehend. All I know is I've never made as much money as I have over the past couple of months. And it's been extremely easy because all I've done is follow the money, right? They're talking about buying massive billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. We follow. They're talking about buying billions of dollars worth of ETH. We follow. We call it the wave. They're talking about buying billions of dollars worth of SOL. We follow. We buy the wave. They're talking about the same for AVEX. I don't like AVEX, but I still follow it anyway. I talked before about Bitcoin first, then ETH, and 𝗕𝗓𝗓𝗓. What we bought is we bought Bitcoin primarily for the last couple of years with some sidelines like XRP and stuff, which did work out, even though it was a bit riskier. But those are my undervalued plays. And then at some point, I think, I'm not sure if Bitcoin was like 113 or 116. We said, oh, you know what? I'm not even sure what the price was. Ethereum right now seems juicy, mostly because of those treasury announcements as well. And Ethereum went for a massive season. Then now the last couple of weeks that Solana looks really, really hot. We're slowly but surely coming down this line where I think smaller and smaller coins are going to be succeeding. And soon enough, we'll get back to degeneracy mode. And my personal situation is I would sell like every single time you look at your portfolio and you think, damn, whoa. Because even if we look here at my trade, one of my trades here, the XRP trade, it's up let's call it $220,000 right now. It's pretty good, some might say. It was up $400 and something thousand before. The reason I didn't sell is I only wanted to sell 10% to just secure something. Right now, of course, I'm quite happy about it. But then I look back and think, I think it will be worth more than $1 million in the plus like quite soon. But still, right, because the market didn't do exactly as we expected, or well, at least it took some more time. I'm still happy I cashed out some. It's always wise to just keep some sort of steady cash flow. Why are all these in a little bit of profit? Because just sometimes I feel like, you know what, I'm going to sell some off. Here, this Ethereum trade, we put $130,000 in at a $400,000 trade. It's up $107,000. Right now, I might as well just sell a little bit. Why? Because Ethereum's at 4,600. Do I think it's going to go to 10K? Sure. But I can use that money again to perhaps, like here, for example, with Doge, maybe perhaps try to find yourself a perfect bottom to buy, and so forth and so on. If you're only going to keep your positions open forever, well, then there's no liquidity. There's no cash flow. You're going to get stuck. You perhaps might never sell, right? If you have a specific goal in mind, sell towards that goal. Don't just sell everything all at once because mentally that's super, super hard. Partially because if the price doesn't hit it, you didn't sell anything. And partially because if the price goes over that by a crazy margin, you might hurt yourself or do stupid things. Selling into levels, selling small parts over time, TWAPing basically seems to almost always work out better for people. You can also, for example, sell 1% every single time it hits a certain, a new high, or 1% a day of your remaining balance starting, for example, a few weeks from now. Or the moment your portfolio hits a new all-time high, you start selling 1% a day of your remaining balance, meaning you can never sell the full thing, right? Such strategies, they often work nicely. Anyway, I consider talking about this for hours, but this is like my kind of crypto bull run strategy. In the back end, you have to understand that if you're talking about making money of all the volatility right now, I've got these bots in place, right? And all they do is they're volatility bots. If the market goes up, let me just quickly show you. I've got two sorts. Some are talking or are trading in coin, the newer ones, and some are trading in dollars. But here I put 310 SOL in, it's up 25 SOL because the more the market moves up and down, it buys and sells. In this case here, about 250 times a day. And every single time it does, it makes me a little bit of Solana. It's about a 400 Solana long, as you can see. And slowly but surely, it's generating more and more Solana. It already cashed at 2.5 SOL in the past 4 days or so, which is about $500, $600. I care more about how much SOL it makes me over time, though, hopefully as the price increases, which, hopefully it will. Next, if you look at XRP, for example, you can see here, I put 40,000 XRP in. It makes me about 0.5 XRP about 100 times a day, so about 50 XRP a day. All in all, there's a lot of XRP, sure, but I've also got smaller bots running right now as we speak, Got a ton of different ones. And the whole idea is that we also make money on the volatility and not just when the price goes up, but also when the price goes sideways. Anyway, I consider talking about it for hours. Just want to get my words out there about my strategy for right now. And that's about it for this little crypto update. So yeah, if you appreciate it, if you agree, let me know down below. Make sure you press the like button. If you don't agree, also let me know down below because I'd like to know. That's about it.